Introduced at his party annual conference as the heavyweight champion of North Antrim, the TUV leader and his party continue to celebrate last summer's electoral success. Mr Allister was elected an MP for the first time in July, ousting the DUP Paisley brand. It's a victory he has relished. His speech was, as ever, a broadside at the DUP and the impact of the Windsor Framework on Northern Ireland.
It is the strategic blunders of the DUP that has worsened our situation. The return to Stormont was the most monumental strategic blunder of them all. The depleted union that we are now left with is one whereby that foundational guarantee of unfettered trade with GB, that which was rooted in the very foundation of the United Kingdom, the Acts of Union, that which was spelt out in Article 6, it now is in suspension. And the fundamental constitutional ramifications of that are immense.
For years, the TUV leader was accused of being a one-man band at Stormont. He's no longer alone, with a seat in the House of Commons, the Assembly, as well as at council level. The party is aiming for more.
My ambition is, my sights are in opposition. Yes, you can see what one TUV MLA does, but certainly we need to have more MLAs elected to the Stormont Chamber, and I can promise you the Stormont Chamber won't be the same again.
And what we want to do is realise our polling figures and turn them into councillors, but that only comes by blood, sweat and tears and hard work.
The TUV has been able to grow its vote at both Assembly and Westminster elections in recent years, but that has not translated into seats.
It's not a transfer-friendly party. It didn't get the 8% of MLAs. It might have gotten a perfect representation. And think about that. That would have been 7 MLAs for the TUV and a perfect representation. So there is a significant vote for it, but it has never made the breakthrough.
This has been the most successful year electorally for the TUV. It now has 2 years before the next Stormont and local elections to plan to try to build on that.
Vicky Hawthorne reporting, and Jim Allister joins me from our Millbank studio. Mr Allister, at the weekend you spent more time attacking the DUP than Sinn Féin. Aren't you responsible for dividing unionism?
No, the salutary division of unionism comes from that fatal step of the DUP leadership, then under Sir Geoffrey, but endorsed entirely by Gavin Robinson, to give up the leverage of resisting the protocol which is depleting and diminishing our union, and to return to Stormont to implement the very thing that is depleting and diminishing our union, namely the protocol, and thereby the prop that currently sustains the protocol and its dismantling of our union is Stormont itself, because you cannot be an executive minister in Stormont without implementing the protocol, which of course in 300 areas of law leaves us subject to foreign jurisdiction, the same laws quite significantly as pertain in the Irish Republic. So all of that is union dismantling.
You are raising a number of points there which I would like to address in this interview. But first, your objection to the Windsor Framework, it continues. Is that not a battle that is lost?
No. If that's a battle that's lost, then the union is lost, because the protocol has dismantled our union from its 2 fundamentals. One, free and unfettered trade between and within all parts of the UK, now in suspension according to the Supreme Court because of the supremacy of the protocol. And secondly, the other fundamental of the union was that we should be governed by laws that we make in our own country, and that was evinced in Article 3 of the Acts of Union. And now we find that in 300 areas of law, we're governed by laws we don't make, laws we can't change, and laws which are imposed colony-like on Northern Ireland. And those are the laws which govern our economy, our agri-food industry.
What is your alternative?
The restoration of equal citizenship and the restoration of Northern Ireland as a full and integral part of the United Kingdom.
How are you going to do that?
You're not an integral part of the United Kingdom if you're subject to foreign jurisdiction.
Your wish list. How are you going to implement that?
But by the manner in which we were going about it, namely by refusing to operate the fundamental structure of the Belfast Agreement so long as we were made a colony of the EU. In other words, to use the leverage that the Belfast Agreement through Stormont gave us and to hold fast and not to roll over, and thereby keep the focus and demand attention from the EU, from both the EU and the British government. But once that pressure was taken off, of course, they are happy to see us disenfranchised in all those areas and to continue under the protocol. So we must get back to a position where we have some leverage.
Let me ask you this question straight out. Is it your intention, would you want to bring down Stormont?
I would want to cease Stormont's operation so long as Stormont by law is required to be an implementer of the dismantling of the Union, in other words, of the protocol. That was the right call back 2 or 3 years ago when all Unionists agreed, or all who cared agreed, and then that was the leverage that was given up, sadly, by the DUP, and that's what has cemented the protocol into position.
If Stormont falls, if it falls, wouldn't that give total power to the UK government, which negotiated the Irish Sea border in the first place?
It would, but it would remove the fundamental internationally acclaimed centrepiece of the Belfast Agreement, namely a operative Stormont. And that is the thing that would bring attention and focus. At the moment, the government is under no compulsion because Unionists under the DUP are merely implementing our own destruction under the protocol. So why would the government be bothered? But the moment, as in the past, when Unionists refuse to do that, then they get the attention, they get the focus, and there is a problem that needs to be resolved. At the moment, as far as the government's concerned, there's no problem to resolve because Unionists are happily implementing a protocol. As long as we do that, then we are lending our hand to our own destruction.
You're still a minor voice in all of this, aren't you? I mean, you're not going to change a government rule here, government policy, are you?
Well, I was told I'd never be elected to Westminster, that the people were very content with what they got, and all the pundits and the commentators got that wrong. But there's a principle here. Is it right for an integral part of the United Kingdom be governed by foreign jurisdiction?
And I've heard you say this many, many times. Can I just ask you what you make of the news that the DUP is going to raise the issue of Irish language at the executive on Thursday?
Well, I trust they do more than raise it. I trust they call in the decision. I trust they refuse to give assent and thereby abort that decision. But of course, their hands are somewhat tied by the fact that they went back into Stormont after the Sinn Féin boycott by accepting Irish language legislation. But this is a seminal issue. This is an issue of the de-Briticising of Northern Ireland and of a Sinn Féin minister exceeding her powers. She has no operational control where she should be, according to the partnership agreement with DFI and Translink, and yet she's making an operational decision. So she does need to be called in, and the decision needs to fail because it is controversial. It needs to fail the cross-community test, and the DUP has that power in their own hands by calling it into the executive and refusing to give it that endorsement.
President Trump is calling Wednesday Liberation Day. The reason for that, he's going to roll out new tariffs. What would be the effect on our economy here in Northern Ireland?
Well, if the EU responds to those tariffs, as I imagine it would, then any goods coming into Northern Ireland, unlike goods coming into GB, would be subject to the tariffs that the EU inflicts in response to the Trump tariffs. And that is an illustration of how Northern Ireland is no longer an integral part of the United Kingdom, governed only by the trade laws of the UK, but is now governed by the trade laws of the EU because we are subject to its customs code, which applies Northern Ireland as a part of the EU and decrees that GB is a foreign country. It really does put a focus on just how appalling our constitutional position has been undermined.
Jim Allister,
and the tariffs are an issue which bring that into focus.
Jim Allister, thank you very much.